ChatGPT in 2 months.
And this is the total compute used to train GPT-4 in 2023.
You didn't see that coming, did you? A bunch of little cubes, not a big cube. What do you say for yourself now? Idiot.
Anyway, shall we get into it? I don't know. You want to set this bad boy up?
Yeah, so we had some requests to comment on this AI video, which was released by a channel called AI in Context, and the title is "We're Not Ready for Superintelligence," which seems true on the face of it. Yeah. I wouldn't be ready tomorrow morning if we woke up and there was superintelligence. Neither of us have watched this video, so this time it's a true reaction video. We don't know what's in here. I have no background other than that.
I know a tiny little bit about what's in there. I think I did watch the first minute and a half or so, and they're definitely affiliated with or talking about the AI 2027 paper. So I don't know if there's connections with regards to like EA or anything, or 80,000 hours, but they're definitely using that paper as a lot of the source for what they're saying. And so there's a relationship there. But let's dive into it. I gotta say, I'm feeling a little bit feisty today. So let's go. Let's go.
The impact of superhuman AI over the next decade will exceed that of the Industrial Revolution. That is the opening claim of AI 2027. It is a thoroughly researched report from a thoroughly impressive group of researchers, led by Daniel Coccatello. In 2021, over a year before ChatGPT was released, he predicted the rise of chatbots, $100 million training runs, sweeping AI chip export controls, chain of thought reasoning. He is known for being very early and very right about what's happening next in AI.
So when Daniel sat down to game out a month.
Yeah, nice. So people in this space love to argue from authority, talking about experts and expert opinions and expert predictions and expert predictors and stuff. And I listened to a podcast conversation with Daniel and Scott Alexander on the Dwarkesh podcast, I believe. And I think this is all true. He definitely did make a lot of early predictions that turned out to be right, which is great. But I just want to add a data point to this conversation, which is what Philip Tetlock wrote about before he went off the rails with all of his you can actually predict the future if you're a super forecaster stuff. His first book was all about how you can have experts who make successful predictions and they're completely awesome right up until they make a completely insane wrong prediction. And so just the fact that he has a track record of making good predictions in the past basically tells us nothing about the next set of predictions in the future. And this is from Tetlock, and his whole book was about how you should never trust experts making predictions because experts are actually more likely to be wrong, even if they've been right in the past. I bring up Philip Tetlock only because he is loved and adored in the Bayesian super forecasting EA community, and he's the one who said, be wary of expert predictions. And I just want to add that while we are washed in appeals to authority, presumably from the rest of this video.
Yeah, I mean, although Tetlock was talking about usually political pundits, and he was pointing out that their incentive structure is such that they are rewarded for making strong predictions. So he was saying, like, when you want cable news and people ask you what's happening, it doesn't usually pay well to say, I'm actually not sure. There's a lot of outcomes here. Predicting the future is hard. I'm not sure who's going to invade who or what the geopolitical landscape is going to look like in 10 years. You're not going to be invited back onto the news if you say that, right? But you will be invited back if you make some provocative statements, you put your foot down. And then people just tend to forget what you've said in the past, and you can just keep on recounting whatever story you want to. And so, people would argue against you and say, like, people like Daniel have sort of taken these lessons to heart and are trying to change the incentive structure around them to, like, reward good predictions and stuff. And obviously, you can't say, well, that means he's definitely correct about what's going to happen tomorrow. But, I think there is something impressive there about being very right on AI, especially because it's such a fast moving field. And, I think he was more right than I certainly was. And I would argue that, you were, if you had asked us for our opinions on chatbots a couple years ago. And like, there's just something about, like, the actual predictions aside, or what they say about the correctness of his views going forward, getting correct predictions in the past just shows you that his finger is at least on the pulse of the technology. Like he understands some of the underlying dynamics, whether those are business dynamics or like the capabilities of the technology, the trends in the industry. Like the predictions aren't coming out of nowhere. And so, having a good track record of predictions, again, there's no guarantee that you're going to keep making good predictions into the future, but it does say something that like you understood some dynamics there. Tetlock's point was that like these political pundits often have never made good predictions because like the whole time they're just prognosticating based on this, entrenched worldview they have. But if you actually step back and look at their track record, they tend to suck.
Well, so first, you don't think that this is a political video, and you don't think that the incentives are such that sensational predictions will give you more fame and clout? Because I definitely think this is a political video, and I definitely think that YouTube is the new space that CNN that occupied when Tetlock was writing. And the fact that we know his name, and the fact that he has this sick documentary video thing about him, I think totally indicates that the incentives that Tetlock were warning about with regards to politicians is very much applicable here. Second, I don't think I've actually ever made predictions about chatbots. The predictions I tend to make, I can't say always, but usually are impossibility predictions. This thing won't happen. I don't expect to see this. I don't think we'll see that thing. But I'm typically pretty careful about the affirmative predictions I make. And with regards to chatbots and stuff, if someone can find a clip of me saying, I don't believe that they'll do X, Y, or Z, then please clip that and embarrass me. But I don't think I've made predictions about chatbots. I think everyone was just surprised at how effective they were. But credits to him. Yeah, he did, I guess, make predictions about his success when other people weren't. But then there's just the selection thing happening. There's 100,000 people who all made a bunch of whack predictions. We forget about all of them. And then we cherry pick the one guy who successfully guessed the stock market 6 times in a row. It's like 1,000 chimpanzees all throw darts. And then somebody goes and they draw a circle around one of the darts. And then you just get rid of all the other chimpanzees, right? Like a track record of successful predictions in the past, I think, is less impressive when we realize that there's a whole bunch of monkeys banging on a whole bunch of typewriters, and some of the predictions are going to be accurate. And then post hoc, you can just always find the guy who made the right one.
Oh man!
Fight. So
we're just gonna fight. First, we'll try and keep it quick. I think the incentives are completely different because he's coming out of the rationalist community, and the whole point of the rationalist community is to judge people based on their predicted track record. So this is not going on CNN and making the staunchest claim possible, and then having people forget what you said the week previously because now you're you're trying to pick a new fight this week. This is people, very carefully looking at what you predicted in the past, trying to be well calibrated with their probabilities. Again, you can argue that this is not the right way to reason your way through problems, but I think this is obviously so different, and it's super unfair of you to say that they're operating in the same political environment that an anchor on CNN or something is. They're, like you said, they're influenced by Tetlock, and they really took those lessons to heart. Now you can't go onto these forums without seeing talk of Breyer scores and, well, you said this week, but you said this last week. How do these compare? These people are, obsessed with being consistent, and insofar as they're not consistent, they have precise reasons about like why they changed their mind, why their probability is different, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think the incentives are completely different. The monkeys on typewriters thing depends on your sample size and stuff. That typically applies for if you're just looking at like a single round. Then you can always find someone who makes a good prediction. That sort of logic gets harder and harder to justify if it's the same person that's continually making pretty good predictions, right? That's the whole point of like the track record, the historical track record of people's predictions. So it's very hard to just have a very low Breyer score, which is how they measure predictive accuracy, which we've talked about before. It's very hard to have a low Breyer score if you have no idea what you're talking about. Anyway, I think you're maybe too harsh on this sometimes, and are leveling some maybe unfair critiques at often the motivation of these people, how well they actually understand what they're talking about, et cetera. I think the place where we're going to agree is like, none of this really matters in some sense, because like it matters what the reasons he's about to give are for why he thinks certain things are going to happen. And we've said that a billion times. The next question after someone tells you the probability of something is to ask, well, why do you think that? And that's where the actual interesting object level discussion happens. So we're definitely on the same page there, but yeah, I think a lot of those early critiques of yours were pretty unfair. Last thing was that I wasn't saying you had made predictions about chatbots. I was just saying so I'll just speak for myself because I don't know what's going on inside your head. I'm just saying, and neither had I, but I'm saying if I had given a prediction, I think they would have been much more wrong than Daniel's prediction.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And mine would have been more wrong too. Yeah. I won't argue. I just want to add one extra thing, but I do disagree. And if we weren't reacting, I would probably argue more, but we'll let the audience adjudicate that. The only other thing I want to add is just, covering your predictions and probability and Breyer scores to me is not very impressive. It just makes it easier to wiggle out of failed predictions. That's to me the actual effect of putting probabilities on everything. Because if you say this is going to happen and it doesn't happen, then you're like, fuck, okay, I was wrong. If you say this is going to happen with 80% probability and it doesn't happen, then you say, well, that's just how probability means. Look at my last history of records, look at my Breyer score, and it gets complicated as fuck. But it just makes it much easier to wiggle out of predictions that don't happen when you add probabilities to it. Again, that's not really responding to what you said. That's just adding an extra point for the audience.
I mean, they would agree with that, right? Like one-off predictions for them are less important than the track record. And they're like explicitly de-emphasizing the one-off prediction for predictive accuracy over time. All right. 30 seconds in. Let's roll.
I might fucking debate even harder next time. This is good. I like it. I'm trying so hard not to be speaking because we got to watch the video, but I want to rah. God, I want to rah. But anyways, yes.
All the EAs and good faith people watching this video. I'm sorry, guys. I'm trying over here. I gotta try and keep Aiden in check. My God, it's exhausting.
Yeah. You're doing the Lord's work. You're doing the Lord's work.
By month prediction of the next few years of AI progress. The world sat up and listened. From politicians in Washington.
I'm worried about this stuff. I actually read the paper of the guy that you had on.
To the world's most cited computer scientist, the godfather of AI. What is so exciting and terrifying about reading this document?
Okay, more appeals to experts and stuff. It's funny. So he put up Yoshua Bengio. Yoshua Bengio is not the godfather of AI.
Yeah, that is
a mistake. Yeah. It's Jeff Hinton. But something I'm definitely going to be talking about more in future podcasts and stuff is that I hate this impression that is given that every AI expert at the very, very top is all terrified of this stuff. That's just factually not true. Everyone knows about Jeff Hinton. Jeff Hinton's equal, his pair, the other guy who's as cited and influential in the machine learning community, which is a name that you'll obviously know, but I don't think our listeners will know very well, is Michael Jordan. Yes, Michael Jordan from basketball, but also he's the Michael Jordan of machine learning. He's the professor.
Michael I. Jordan, if you're going to Google
Michael
it.
I. Jordan. There's another researcher in AI who's very well established named Neil Lawrence, who hosts a machine learning podcast that I haven't listened to in a while, but I listened to when I was during my PhD because it's like technical. It's for researchers. And so Neil Lawrence described Michael Jordan and Jeff Hinton as the two binary stars out of which all graduate students who run all of the top departments in every lab everywhere come from. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because Yoshua Bengio, who the video mistook for Jeff Hinton, Yoshua Bengio's PhD advisor was Michael Jordan. The head of Google Brain, or the former head of Google Brain, Zubin Gerbani, did his PhD with Michael Jordan, then he did it with Jeff Hinton. Michael Jordan thinks all of this stuff is whack, and he's moved to France because of this. I know you said he didn't, but I just learned in a talk that he did, or at least at the end of a talk, when asked why he was in France, he said it's because of everyone in the Bay Area is crazy, he said. And then they said on the West Coast, they're all crazy. And on the East Coast, he said they're all crazy too, but for political reasons. So Jordan's left. Jordan doesn't do much public outreach. So that's why the public has a very skewed perspective about what, quote, AI researchers think. But just for the audience, Michael Jordan's student, Adi Ramdas, is Ben's PhD advisor. So Ben is firmly in the Jordan lineage. And one way you can think about it is Hinton's big contribution, for which he rightly won the Nobel Prize, was neural networks. And Michael Jordan basically did everything else in machine learning, but neural networks. Obviously, that's an exaggeration. Of course, that's an exaggeration, but the one kind of rough way you can think about it. But it's just not the case. This is not the case that all AI experts everywhere think this. It's very much following the Hinton lineage. The Hinton lineage is scared of this, but they're only scared of it because they've read the same stuff that we've read. They've read Bostrom and they've read Yudkowsky. It's not like there's any new ideas coming from them. They just read it and were persuaded. But Michael Jordan read it and thought it was completely insane and left. I'll maybe plug for the listeners an interview Michael Jordan gave with Lex Friedman, but just listen to it. You just get a sense of like what someone who knows what they're talking about thinks about applying optimization to everything. I think Lex Friedman said, like, don't you think all of life can be reduced to an optimization problem, which is kind of a requirement for the AGI stuff, because you just want to optimize your way into new beings and things. And Mike Jordan just scoffed. And he's like, optimization is just one narrow branch of mathematics, and it can do some things, but it cannot possibly capture all of the richness and complexities of the human experience. And it was just an absurd question to him. And every time Hinton's name is raised as like representing what AI researchers everywhere think, I'm just going to scream Michael Jordan till my lungs give out, because it is not true that there's a single opinion within the AI expert research, quote unquote, community. Anyway, done.
Nice, yeah. Not that this video was saying that explicitly, but I agree that these conversations often give that impression as if there's just one model.
Well, he's saying the godfather of AI thinks that like it's all this like expert clout shit. It's arguing from authority, even indirectly. Like experts think. Well, you're not representing the field very accurately if you're just cherry picking the experts that agree with you.
Is that it's not just a research report. They chose to write their prediction as a narrative to give a concrete and vivid idea of what it might feel like to live through rapidly increasing AI progress.
And spoiler, it predicts the extinction of the human race. Unless we make different
choices. So you don't think sensational predictions like that are good for the people who predict it? Like, this is what I mean when I say it. The incentive is to predict very sensational predictions, because then you get a lot of attention. And whether that's CNN or 80,000 hours, it turns out it is 80,000 hours. Whether or not it's in one form or another, those who make the most sensational predictions are those who are going to be paid attention to, which is why doomers and apocalypticists for millennia are always the ones who people listen to.
Okay, let's draw a distinction then between the video, people making this video, and like the actual predictions of Daniel himself and his team, right? Because those are still all probabilistic. And I think it's pretty obvious that if those predictions don't pan out, and they're on a short time scale, so we're going to see pretty quickly if they do pan out, right? It's predicted by 2027. I think they'll be dinged for that. And I expect to see some pretty honest reckoning with that in the blogosphere, to be honest. Maybe that's my prediction of what'll happen. But and so I think, so for instance, like just when the narrator there said killing all humans, I'm quite sure, I haven't actually read the whole report, I'm quite sure that will be like one scenario that's assigned some amount of probability. I doubt they said 100 for sure all humans will be dead by 2027, even though that's the way the video makes it seem.
But so this is the same shit that happened with climate change, in the sense that you have the environmental scientists write this giant 1,000-page IPCC report that is like nuanced and has a bunch of stuff in it, but then occasionally there's very sensational lines in there. But then those are the lines that get cherry picked. Those are the lines that get videos written about them. Those are the lines that people remember. And I'm sorry, I think that if you are a writer in this space, like you have to be aware that when you write these sensational lines, even if you caveat it with a lot of probability and a lot of like, this is one of many things and we're very uncertain and stuff, like, I'm sorry, that's what's going to be remembered, and that's what's going to be then promulgated into the culture.
Yeah, I fully disagree with that. Like, I think that it was not, I think the IPCC report should have been written as it was written. I think the fault is with the journalists who then sensationalize it and misrepresent what's in the report. I think the fault is squarely with the journalists there, and not the scientists. Are just, they have these models and they're just being clear about the uncertainty of the models. They're saying at the upper band of uncertainty, there could be, I don't know actually what the extreme scenarios were. There could be 9 degrees of warming at the extreme upper band of uncertainty. This would mean A, B, and C for the planet, which presumably are not good things. They can't insert in every single sentence there, like, this probably won't happen. This probably won't happen. Like, they just need to be clear about what's in the report and be honest about it. And then it's, we need to encourage good journalistic norms that don't just pick up the report, start cherry picking sentences, because it's impossible to write something that deals with something with potentially serious consequences in a way that is immune from anyone misrepresenting you, right? This is what you're arguing. Like, you have to write in such a way to be immune from misrepresentation. That's impossible. Popper even said that was impossible.
No, I don't think it's nearly as hard as that. Let's just stick with the IPCC thing for a sec. You write that, I'm just going to make up something, that by 2020, by 2050, we're all going to be extinct. I know that that's not exactly what they've said, but just some sensational line. And then where you put all the assumptions and where you put all the stuff that's required for that prediction to hold, you don't put that at page 800 and you put the sensational prediction at page 200. You make sure it's very clear where the sensational thing is written. Exactly underneath it, you put all the caveats so that you can't easily cherry pick. So similarly, you have a discussion page where you say, like, to journalists out there who want, like, to cherry pick this statistic, please also read this section. You just have like a little single 1 paragraph boilerplate that distances the author of the paper from what they know is going to be misinterpreted by journalists when cherry picked. There's definitely techniques that you can use to prevent cherry picking. I think Scott Alexander actually innovated here, and he wrote like one very sensational, or very not sensational, pardon me, very politically charged piece about like gender differences. And then he had 1 paragraph where he said something very charged and he knew it was going to be excerpted. So in every other word, he put like some weird character string. And the reason he put that character string is that there's like journalistic integrity that prevents you from like doing ... dots. And so there are techniques to prevent this. And Scott Alexander is culpable for producing a lot of this fear. And I think that they know that when they write these lines, that these are the lines that are going to be remembered. I don't think it's that hard to prevent cherry picking, because Scott Alexander has done that in other pieces.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll defend the IPCC scientists on this one. Like, I think there's clear fault of video here for catastrophizing, but I'm just saying I'm not ready to attack the report or the people in the report like you are for this precise point, because I know probably that there are like probabilities attached to this, right? When a video highlights 4 words, killing all humans, and shades everything else around it, what do you think that means? You could also do that with ... dots and character strings around those words, right? Like that's the power of video editing.
You don't think AI 2027 was sensational?
It depends what you mean. Like, I think it was sensational but honest.
That's fair. Yeah.
It's sensational by the very nature of what they're talking about. And they know that, right? They know they're on the much more worried side than the general public. And part of the point is to draw attention to that. I think they're wrong to be that worried, obviously. But I don't think it's sensational for the purpose of being sensational. No.
I think that they could have done a better job of adding all these caveats and clarifications and uncertainties. Like the takeaway in the culture from people who don't listen to our podcast and aren't as obsessed about this stuff, but who are aware of AI 2027, is that like we're even more fucked than they thought they were before they read it. Like it's a fear-mongering document. And if the authors intended it to be scary because they believe it, but also think that there's a lot of uncertainty, then I think that they could have written that such that when I speak to people who've read the report, they don't come away feeling like, oh my God, we're all going to die. There's things that could have been done to write it less sensationally that I don't think they did do, but your point is a good one. They didn't do it because they genuinely are worried about it. I'm just, no, it's a fair point. Like, if they are generally worried, then that's what they want to create sensation, then that's what they're going to do. I think that they're wrong to be worried. And I think that I don't want to hear when these predictions don't work in like 2 years, all of the probability nuance stuff now being added to the conversation post hoc because they're wrong, which I'm imagining is going to happen. Anyway, let's keep going.
Yeah. I think it's just clear that you came into this mad.
Yeah, well, I'm mad at the whole idea. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I hate the idea that people are telling each other that their kids are going to die by 2040.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, you're mad about the content, so I don't think you're doing a good job of exercising your like cognitive empathy and trying to see the world from their perspective of like, and then like what's honest, what's dishonest. I think for you, it all collapses into like dishonest fear mongering because you disagree with the message, and so like the motives must be impure and like fuck these guys and they all suck. And I'm trying to separate the people from the beliefs here. Like, yeah, nice. Okay, keep going. Yeah, that's good, useful tension. Yeah. We're a minute in.
that this is what your donations go
The
to.
AI 2027
like
scenario
this.
starts in summer 2025.
What's that?
This is a really highly produced, very nice video. And so when people donate to EA and when they donate to 80K, just know that they're paying for studio lighting and stuff.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily giving money to developmental projects in Africa. They're paying for really, really well-produced videos like this.
Yeah. I mean, explicitly not anymore. And I mean, I should definitely share that criticism. But like 80,000 Hours, which is, used to be, I'm not even sure how that works anymore. But like, the nonprofit that produced this is now explicitly focused on AI.
I gotta put some deodorant on. I'm so mad I'm stinking over here. I'm literally stinking mad. Keep it in. Keep it in.
Which happens to be when we're filming this video. So why don't we take stock of where things are at in the real world and then jump over to the scenarios timeline. Right now, it might feel like everyone, including your grandma, is selling an AI-powered something.
Go pro with the new Oral-B Genius AI.
Flippy the chef makes Spud spectacular.
But most of that is actually tool AI, just narrow products designed to do what Google Maps or calculators did in the past, help human consumers and workers do their thing. The holy grail of AI is artificial general intelligence.
AGI. Artificial General Intelligence.
Is a system that can exhibit all the cognitive capabilities humans can.
Creating a computer system that itself is a worker.
I'm just going to be plugging Michael Jordan repeatedly throughout this, so just forgive me in advance. But I would encourage listeners to watch any of his latest talks. They're given to an academic audience. He's not public. He doesn't do public outreach too much, but he is trying to create a new vision for the field because he, like myself, detests this sci-fi about AGI, and his vision for the field, the holy grail from his perspective, is not this. It's creating markets. It's creating dynamic, integrated markets where the tools are embedded into these emergent systems, and then you create markets like Airbnb, like Uber Eats, like certain music platforms. And so I just want to add that even this is not totally accurate. It's not an accurate reflection of what AI researchers think the Holy Grail is. Mike Jordan is putting work into creating a different Holy Grail precisely because he thinks this is just a sci-fi and unattainable goal. And I would just suggest the listeners watch any of his most recent talk on this.
Yeah, and clearly there's a selection effect here, right? Where you're like you're getting clips from the leaders of the companies that are, of course, incentivized to say they're building AGI because that's how they're bringing in a bunch of revenue. That's how they're getting a bunch of public attention. That's how they have newspaper stories written about them, et cetera, and videos like this. So, there is an issue there where like the sort of the down to earth academics who just continually plodding along, doing their research, like excited about sort of esoteric branches of AI, like they're not in these videos. It'd be interesting to see at this point, but I think if you were to actually to turn their own sort of survey tools back on them, I think if you were to actually survey like all the professors who are actually like doing machine learning research, say, my guess is the majority, if not the vast majority, would think the concept of AGI is either incoherent or that we're just nowhere close to it. Yeah. And so for me, an interesting question actually is to what extent the leaders of these companies, the Altmans of the world, actually think AGI is possible in the way they're describing it, or whether they're just paying lip service to get attention.
Yeah, I mean, it's not only attention, it's grant writing. Like, when you write grants, you have to anchor it to stuff that the public is excited about. And AGI is a great literary device to get funds. And so I could imagine Altman is constrained based on the many fundraising conversations and stuff he's written to talk about AGI. But it would be interesting in his heart of hearts if he thinks it's attainable or if he's just using it as a writing device, which is very common.
Yeah.
That's so flexible and capable, we can communicate with it in natural language and hire it to do work for us, just like we would a human. And there are actually surprisingly few serious players in the race to build AGI. Most notably, there's Anthropic, OpenAI, and Google DeepMind, all in the English-speaking world, though China and DeepSeek recently turned heads in January with a surprisingly advanced and efficient model. Why so few companies? Well,
yeah, just a comment. So I read the DeepSeek paper. It was excellent. They absolutely innovated. I would totally recommend people read that paper. One of the major innovations that they did is just put a lot of optimization tricks at the hardware level. Like, so when I'm writing stuff in PyTorch and I'm writing like LLMs or something, like I'm never thinking about CUDA. I'm never thinking about the GPU. But the DeepSeek team just showed that you can do a lot of like very low level optimization things to train these systems like in 1/10 of the price. And they also open sourced a lot of the end-to-end training pipeline. So not exactly what OpenAI did, but you get a sense of like, okay, if you want to build these things at scale, you need to first pre-train, then you need to do RLHF, and then you need to do these like context extension techniques. And so it was just kind of cool to read the DeepSeek paper, both to see their technical innovations, but then also to get a sense of like all of the stuff that OpenAI is hiding from the world. So they just open sourced it. So just a plug to DeepSeek because they did some really great work.
I like that they just don't even take meta seriously on here. It's like you and your llama. It's not even on the map.
That's a good point.
Which is pretty funny. Yeah,
that's a really funny point. Yeah.
Bundled in with the second tier AI companies, them and Mistral are hanging out, being sad.
We don't know where Quinn is. Quinn's somewhere chilling somewhere.
For several years now, there's basically been one recipe for training up an advanced cutting-edge AI. And it has some pricey ingredients. For example, you need about 10% of the world's supply of the most advanced computer chips. Once you have that, the formula is basically just throw more data and compute at the same basic software design that we've been using since 2017 at the frontier of AI.
Okay. So they like to appeal to trends and forecasts and stuff. And I'll be the first to admit that my side, quote unquote, of the argument has like gotten a lot of stuff wrong. Turing test, all that stuff. There has been goalpost shifting, etc. But there's also been some huge goalpost shifting on the other side because what he said there is not strictly true. So it's not like 2017 to like 2021, people were looking at these models and they were like, we just need to scale them up. And the moniker that captured this attitude was scale is all you need. And there were t-shirts saying scale is all you need to get to AGI, et cetera, et cetera. And that just turned out to be untrue. So it turned out that you need post-training techniques, what are now RLHF and training on chains of thought. Anyway, there's more ingredients that you need to throw at it besides just scaling things up. I never hear people acknowledge that they just got this wrong. And they typically just bundle in these post-training techniques with scale as if it's all the same thing. Like, yeah, we've just kept scaling things up. But that's not true. These were other techniques that we had to develop because we started seeing diminishing returns as we just made things bigger and bigger and threw more data at it, right? So like the lore at this point is that OpenAI was training GPT-5 and then was just not seeing the right returns, pivoted to some other techniques, and that became these quote unquote reasoning models. But no one foresaw that I've ever heard of. And this is just, this argument by trend thing has already failed in that respect.
Nice. I was going to make a different point, but that's an excellent observation that I hadn't actually thought of before. So really nice. I was going to make the point that what they talk about scaling the models up. That's half, at least if we're going to simplify things, that's it. That's at least half of the equation. The other part of it is the data. You got to scale the data up. This would be like arguing about trends with regards to automobiles and talking about bigger and bigger engines, but not talking about where the fuel is going to come from to go in the engines. So it doesn't matter how big your fucking engine is or how big your model is if you don't have training data. And there's an excellent paper, which I want to quickly share. I'll just flash it up on the screen when we're editing. Called Will We Run Out of Data? Limits of LLM Scaling Based on Human-Generated Data. This paper was originally written in 2022. It's basically received no attention, but I think it should receive much more attention. And all it did was just estimate the amount of high-quality feedstock training data that we have on the internet. Because you can't just shove in like movie subtitles and like audio from TikTok videos and think that these things are going to get better, because you need to have like high-quality training data. So high-quality training data would be like Wikipedia, Stack Overflow, GitHub, Project Gutenberg. So text that has actually been thought about, massaged, and such that we know that there's like truth in there. And so talking about trend analysis, one trend that I think is important to keep in mind is that they estimated that we will run out of this high quality feedstock by 2027, interestingly enough. So unless we have an unlimited amount of medical scientists who can write Wikipedia pages endlessly on new discoveries, these things are not going to get smarter. The way that they deal with this in AI 2027 is by just talking about synthetic data. That's bullshit. Synthetic data is not going to work. There's a Nature paper, which I'll also flash up on the page, by Yarn Gall, and they just tried this. They just tried training a bigger model on synthetic data from a smaller model, and you just get model collapse. You can't do it. It doesn't work. Yes, maybe you can get some extra performance by using synthetic data, which has then been cleaned up by people. That's possible. But that's only going to be effective in domains where you have a lot of mechanical Turk workers cleaning up like grammar and stuff. But you need experts to clean up, medical data. You can't just synthetically create data from scratch. Like, this is perpetual motion machine territory. And as far as I can tell, the AI 2027 paper just assumes we'll solve the data problem by synthetic data. But there's a Nature paper that shows that doesn't work, and it has not been cited in AI 2027. You can't get something for free. Even AlphaFold, people are trying to use AlphaFold to come up with synthetic protein structure data. And Mike Jordan, again, has a paper showing that if you do that, you're missing just a huge number of real concerns that people who are actually trying to study this stuff needs to investigate, because the questions that you're asking are precisely those questions that aren't easily answerable by existing data sets. So you cannot synthetically create data. This is like, to do that, you would have to have a model that simulates the real world to create a model that they think is going to be able to simulate the world. There's a circularity and a perpetual motion machine thing happening. So again, like, that has not been grappled with by the authors here, and they just think that they'll wave their synthetic data wand. It just doesn't work like that. That's just sci-fi. That just doesn't happen. Yeah.
The transformer. That's what the T in GPT stands for. To give you an idea of just how much hardware is the name of the game right now, this represents the total computing power, or compute, used to train GPT-3 in 2020. It's the AI that would eventually power the first version of ChatGPT. You probably know how that went.
ChatGPT is the fastest growing user-based platform in history. 100 million users on.
I'm going to guess what he's going to do is just play with big numbers. He's just going to do a little cube for the intelligence of this thing, and then he's going to do a huge cube for the bigger intelligence. Like, this is just talking about how big your engine is. And give me the big cube of data. Show me the big cube of data. That would be terrifying. But we've essentially already trained on it. The internet is used up now. There's not a lot of, which is why, like, a lot of the innovations coming out of these systems are on stuff like tool use and stuff like longer context and things. And that's great. That's really important innovations. But that's not going to make these things fundamentally smarter, because you need to have more actual data, and we're running out of that. It's a finite resource. So just when he does big cubes, and when the big cubes are supposed to scare people about the capacities of these models, he's only looking at half of the equation. Unless he's going to show me data stuff. But I would be surprised if he does.
ChatGPT in 2 months.
And this is the total compute used to train GPT-4 in 2023.
You didn't see that coming, did you? A bunch of little cubes, not a big cube. What do you say for yourself now? Idiot.
Like, come on, just get a big cube. Like, it would be badass to, like, bring out this thing on it. Well, you remember Bill Nye, the science guy? He had this great episode where he was showing the scale of how far the Earth is from the sun compared to, like, Pluto and stuff. And that motherfucker rode on a bicycle for like 500 miles to get to where Pluto is. That's the kind of scale analysis that I want back. This is lazy. Do you remember, like, it was in a gymnasium and then
dude.
Yeah.
That's
Bill
so
Nye.
funny. Where's the production quality of this video?
Yeah.
Get on a bike.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The lesson people have taken away is pretty simple. Bigger is better. And much bigger is much better.
You have all these trends. You have trends in revenue going up, trends in compute going up, trends on various benchmarks going up. How does it all come together? What does the future actually look like? Questions like how do these different factors interact? It seems plausible that when the benchmark scores are so high, then there should be crazy effects on, jobs, for example, and that would influence politics. And then also, so all these things interact. And how do they interact? Well, we don't know, but thinking through in detail how it might go is the way to start grappling with that.
Okay, so that's where we are in the real world. The scenario kicks off from there and imagines that in 2025, we'd have the top AI labs releasing AI agents to the public in summer. An agent is an AI that can take instructions and go...
Which we should just acknowledge has happened. So presumably, I'm not actually sure when this video was made, a couple months ago maybe, but the paper was right on that benchmark.
Yeah, so we have a running doc in the Discord where I just took the AI 2027. I just said, give me, to ChatGPT, just give me a bulleted list of concrete predictions and let's just check them off. All of the predictions for between now and like mid 2025 have come true. But that's not that difficult. Anyone who, that's just the quarter, companies plan for the next quarter. So they've just done a quarter prediction. This definition is a little slippery. One of my hobby horses is how the word agent can mean a bunch of different things. Mm-hmm. It's not that an agent does a task for you online. Agents are just text generation interwoven with Python function calls. So I'm writing agents right now, and one of the agents, it turns on the office lights. So that's not online. That's part of the Ethernet connection or whatever. And so when you are generating text, this is the part of the MCP stuff, you generate text, and then at a certain point you generate call Python function now. And so then the text generation stops, then Python is run, Python returns stuff, and then that is then put into the text, the text that's been generated, and then it keeps generating after that. And then what you see is just the Python stuff has been just removed before it's shown to you. So there's nothing intrinsically about online, although of course one of the first things you do is connect these Python to online. But listener, keep in mind the word agent is going to start to take on very different definitions. So it's what it actually means is Python and text generation interwoven. But then later on, it starts to take on an agent is this thing that has its own wills and desires and can break into cryptographic systems and start to get away from the trainer and stuff. And that's just using agent in a completely different way. There's no Python function that's going to all of a sudden get away from your coder. Unless someone can give me an experience of them writing Python and then the Python starts just mutating and hacking into the mainframe and taking over their fridge. And that shit just doesn't happen. And so keep that in mind when the word agent is used over and over again. It's going to start meaning different things. Sorry. Yeah, I am feisty today.
Faden releasing his inner Wittgenstein here, getting mad at the word games. Let's go.
That can take instructions and go into a task for you online, like booking a vacation or spending half an hour searching the internet to answer a difficult question for you. But they're pretty limited and unreliable at this point. Think of them as enthusiastic interns that are...
So ChatGPT or OpenAI did release ChatGPT agent and lowercase agent. That specifically is about online browsing. But when the word agent is used just in general, so I'm using at the moment Google's agent development kit. So that's how you would actually make these systems. There's nothing intrinsic about online there. So just a bit of, I don't even want to say slipperiness, just the word can mean multiple different things, but that gets us into trouble in the future.
Can OpenAI's agent actually access your OS?
No, it comes up, it runs like a Dockerized thing where it just has a little, very simple browser that is then displayed. So it's completely sandboxed. Yeah.
I see.
Shockingly incompetent sometimes. Since the scenario was published in April, this early prediction has actually already come true. In May, both OpenAI and Anthropic released their first agents to the public. The scenario imagines that OpenBrain, which is a fictional composite of the leading AI companies, has just trained and released Agent Zero, a model trained on 100 times the compute of GPT-4. We don't have enough blocks for that. At the same time, OpenBrain is building massive data centers to train the next generation of AI agents, and they're preparing to train Agent 1 with 1,000 times the compute of GPT-4. This new system, Agent 1, is designed primarily to speed up AI research itself. The public will actually never see the full version because OpenBrain withholds its best models for internal use. I want you to keep that in mind as we go through this scenario. You're going to be getting it from a God's eye view with full information from your narrator, but actually living through this scenario as a member of the public would mean being largely in the dark as radical changes happen all around you. Okay, so OpenBrain wants to win the AI race against both its Western...
The public isn't radical in the dark. The public, the public can read papers just like the rest of us. I'd start with the DeepSeek paper. I'd start by just listening to researchers outside of this little community, shall we say.
Oh, but they mean in this scenario specifically, right? They're in a very specific scenario.
You're talking about how the public is completely in the dark as to what OpenAI is and Anthropic are working on in the background, right?
At this point. So yeah.
Yeah, but the DeepSeek paper gives like a pretty big hint.
No. At this point in their thought experiment. So right now they've posited there's one company. It's well ahead of the others in terms of development. Like they're in a very specific thought experiment. And I think it's very unlikely, but they're in a very specific scenario.
I see. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, I take it back. But just in general, the public is not that in the dark. The public can read a lot of the work, go to the conferences. Like the conferences are talking about cutting edge ideas, and OpenAI is doing some modifications of those. But it's not like they have some fundamentally like new technology that is so foreign to like academic researchers and universities that it's just crazy. No, they're just borrowing the same ideas that are publicly available on archive and then scaling it up with stuff. And that was my main point, but like a good clarification.
I mean, although in some sense we did get lucky with the DeepSeek release, right? And like most people working on this stuff had an idea. So before DeepSeek released their model, most people had an idea of how ChatGPT was doing its reasoning. But it there was like a couple months there where we didn't know for sure. It was like, well, maybe they're doing something completely different, maybe not, probably not. But like, if we had to guess, we're assuming they're training on chains of thought. But we're like not entirely sure what's going on here. Yeah. And so, you can imagine that once if a company were to get far enough ahead, like what they're doing, because, these companies are not anymore at the point of writing papers about what they're actually doing. Yeah, it's not a given that everyone will know exactly what's going on behind closed doors here.
I guess my main point is the stuff that's going on behind closed doors isn't so like wildly out of distribution compared to just the stuff you would read at NeurIPS or at ICML or at these conferences as to be like some foreign alien new super powerful technology. It's in the same space. They're just big changes, iterating, tweaking. And so staying up to date with the literature gives you like a frosted glass box view of what's going on. It's not clear, but it's certainly not black box either.
Competitors and against China. The faster they can automate their R&D cycle, so getting AI to write most of the code, help design experiments, better chips, the faster that they can pull ahead. But the same capabilities that make these AIs such powerful tools also make them potentially dangerous. An AI that can help patch security vulnerabilities can also exploit them. An AI that understands biology can help with curing diseases, but also designing
I think it's worth demarcating the point in the video when we've gone from models that are trained on text that's available on the internet and therefore mimic the sort of patterns that we have on the internet and answer precisely the kinds of questions you'd think are able to be answered based on good information on the internet. We've made this subtle jump in this video from like those kinds of models that undoubtedly they're like faster than humans at a lot of stuff just because they're running at like near light speed. But like the kinds of information they're giving you are not superhuman because they're trained on human data. And like that's their bottleneck at this point. So that's as good as they can get in some way. And then when we made this subtle jump to something that is like, it's superhuman in its ability because they're saying that it's doing most of its own research now, right? So we've gone from something that's like sort of limited by what humans know to something that's like now fundamentally better than humans at like doing its research. And now it's iteratively improving itself.
Well, there's one very simple thing to see here. So if you have a cryptographic system that is about factoring extremely large numbers, that is like an NP hard problem that is based that the blockchain runs on, that is rock solid, and no amount of Python function calls will break that. Like the tool use that defines agents, tools are definitionally stuff that is too difficult for an agent, so they offload it to some script. It's just a script, right? But those scripts are now just back in a standard, boring computer science land. And when stuff is cryptographically secure, that's because we have theory that says that it is impossible to solve this problem in times shorter than the lifetime of the universe. And so to talk about agents solving this is to just not understand what agents actually are in the real world, because agents are just offloading certain parts of the generation to Python. And it doesn't matter how smart the agent is, because there's nothing that can get around that. So when they talk about like these agents can create cybersecurity things and then find flaws in those cybersecurity bugs, that's true. There are bugs in code. There are holes. There's certain stuff that can be hacked based on just crappy software. And presumably there's going to be more of those if people are using these agents to write software. But that's just going to require slightly better cryptography systems that you just put these NP hard problems, all the spots that you need them to be. No agent is going to be able to solve that because a tool can't solve that. So it's just sci-fi to imply otherwise, I would say. Unless you get into the territory of, well, these agents are going to create quantum computers, and we know theoretically that quantum computers can solve some of these problems more quickly, but now you have to have agents developing entire like magnetic coils and shit, and like that's just, again, not going to happen.
They didn't say these agents could solve cryptography or something?
Rewind just maybe to rewind. So I don't know, 5 seconds.
An AI that can help patch security vulnerabilities can also exploit them.
Yeah.
An AI that understands biology can help with diseases.
Any agent that can patch security vulnerabilities can also exploit them. That's generally true if the vulnerability is just due to crappy code. But the implication is that, and maybe you just disagree with my reading of the subtext here. The subtext here is that cryptography systems are no longer safe from agents, but good ones are. An agent won't be able to solve the blockchain problem faster than any other software because it's all going to bottom out onto just certain scripts. That was my main point.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that point. I don't think that's what they were saying. I think they're just saying like these AIs are really good coders, and like human coders find vulnerabilities and stuff. So like now AI coders are going to find vulnerabilities and stuff.
But like, oh, come on! But they are laying the groundwork for the FOOM scenario where humanity is fucked because any difficult problem that we can throw at it will just be hacked around by the AI. And I'm just saying that, well, no, cryptography is designed so that it doesn't matter how smart your programmer is, you can't do it. You cannot do it. And so to the extent that this comment is laying the groundwork for future stuff is kind of where I was commenting, but we'll leave it to the viewer to see if I'm being...
Yeah, I mean, but they're talking about bugs and exploits in systems. They're not talking about like breaking cryptography, right? They're talking about getting around cryptographic protocols by finding other bugs. Like, you know, when humans hack things, we're not figuring out like fast ways to factor prime numbers or like guessing the right factors. Like,
for sure.
Yeah, it's that we're finding other ways in.
Yeah. But just not everything can be cracked is my main point. And to the extent that this is implying that there's always going to be a workaround, I think that's false. Maybe I'll soften it to that claim.
With curing diseases, but also designing bioweapons. By 2026, Agent 1 is fully operational and being used internally at OpenBrain. It is really good at coding. So good, it starts to accelerate AI research and development by 50%, and it gives them a crucial edge. OpenBrain leadership starts to be increasingly concerned about security. If someone steals their AI models, it could wipe away their lead.
I realize we're at an hour and a half, and it's been 6 minutes of the video. So this is good.
I know. This must be so annoying to listen to. Let him speak.
So when they say like AI is going to accelerate research and development, I think that's probably true. But to me, the all important distinction is there a human in the loop or not? So humans plus AI, I think, are absolutely going to get more efficient. But the worry is, or at a certain point, definitionally it's required to have humans out of the loop. And now these things just start going off on their own. For reasons you and I have argued about endlessly, I don't think that's possible. But I just wanted to flag that to the extent that these predictions allow for humans in the loop, I think it's possible. To the extent that they're saying at a certain point, there's going to be no humans and they just have these research agents just coming up with discoveries on their own, just independently. I think it's not possible. And also this matters, like in the Discord, I hammer on about the human in the loop thing, like ad nauseum. But from a pure practical perspective, it really, really matters if you need to employ a graduate student or if you can just not do that, right? Like if you could come up with these R&D researchers that work without humans, then all of a sudden we are in like completely new territory because you just in parallel research the 1,000 most difficult problems and you get 1,000 answers back. But as soon as you require humans there, you can't parallelize and it becomes expensive. And so the human in the loop thing matters from a like a theoretical perspective, but also just from a practical perspective. There's a major difference between systems with humans in it or required and not.
And I mean that's what the crux of this whole thing is, right? They're arguing the trend will just continue and like soon these systems won't need many humans in the loop. And you want to say they will always need humans in the loop. And my comments earlier were just meant to flag that like they're sneaking that difference under the rug a bit by just talking about continuous trends. But for someone like me, that's actually a very discrete jump. So like, you know, what I was saying earlier was that from my point of view, we're basically just getting really good at things that we have a bunch of training data for. And these can seem superhuman because they can do things so fast. They can output things faster than a human. So when you see it solve a math problem, it's like, wow, a human couldn't have done it that fast. So this is superhuman. But you have to separate the speed from the actual output, from the capability, and ask, like, was this capability implicit somehow in the training data? And making this jump to it doing things that are not in the training data, which is required if it's going to do its own novel research. Now you're doing things that like couldn't have been in the training data, right? That's a jump that I want to argue is actually infeasible with the current technology, but that they're implicitly assuming here. Like they're not making that claim, but like when they just talk about trend extrapolation, like they're building that claim in. So I just want to like highlight that jump at this point in the video has now been made, and we're not going back. Like we're just gonna keep going down that path.
Yeah.
A quick sidebar to talk about feedback loops. Woo, math. Our brains are used to things that grow linearly over time, that is, at the same rate, like trees or my pile of unread New Yorker magazines. But some growth gets faster and faster over
comic
time.
relief.
This often sloppily gets called exponential. That's not always quite mathematically right, but the point is it's hard to wrap your mind.
I'm going to pause it. I hate this so much. I hate this so much. Fuck you. Every exponential becomes logarithmic or logistic. Every exponential starts fast and then peters out.
Whoa.
Every real world exponential. Every real world exponential. Like, because real world. Yeah, real world exponential. Yeah. This is exactly what terrified people with overpopulation, right? So exactly charts like this. You have a linear amount of resources, but oh my God, holy shit, our population is growing exponentially and just shoots off into the clouds. Then what happened? It did that until it kind of just like slowly plateaued. It just slowly plateaued afterwards. And this is never talked about. All real world exponentials eventually hit some sort of limitation and then just gradually plateau. But when you see curves like this, it just makes you terrified because you're only showing part of the logistic curve where it starts exponential and then flattens out. That's why I hate this graph. This graph is...
It also...
I was just going to say, this graph is at the root of all doom and gloom claims. I bet you could find some sort of graph like this, like the hockey stick graph with regards to climate change. You definitely can find this with the population thing. And what they're all missing is that trends are trends until they stop. All trends stop. It's going to stop. It has to stop. At a certain point, it's going to stop. But when you make fucking charts like this, you just ignore that they all become logistic and flatten. So, sorry.
There's an interesting argument of the style that they like to make that you could make here, which is to say, if you're concerned about historical trends and stuff, every time we've had a concern about exponential growth, it's always flattened out. So if you want to argue based on base rates and outside views and frequencies and stuff, then just look at all those examples, and that should basically tell you all you need to know about this one. Obviously they just argue that this technology is different, etc. But there is this like irony here, where like they love to argue by trend when it's convenient.
Yeah, another one is the trend of every doom and gloom camp that has ever made an apocalyptic prediction has always been wrong. Always. That's a trend. Obviously, I wouldn't make a strong argument in using that, but it just speaks to the weakness of using trends as arguments.
I don't know, mate. I'm semi-convinced Obama is a lizard, so we're holding out on that one.
Your mind around. Remember March 2020? Even if you'd read on the news that
the rate of new infections is doubling about
what happened to the COVID trend? Did it flatten?
Days.
Of course it fucking flattened.
It
always flattens.
Shocking to see numbers go from hundreds to millions in a matter of weeks. At least it did for me. AI progress could follow a similar pattern.
We see many years ahead of us of extreme progress that we feel is like pretty much on lock, and models that will get to the point where they are capable of doing meaningful science, meaningful AI research.
In this scenario, AI is getting better at improving AI, creating a feedback loop. Basically, each generation of agent helps produce a more capable next generation, and the overall rate of progress gets faster and faster each time it's taken over.
Sci-fi now. So yeah, like you said, there's no going back. Now it's assuming that there's no agent, no human in the loop, that GPT-5 will produce GPT-6. Also, you mentioned implicit assumptions. They made a lot of those, but an explicit assumption that they've made, which is false, see Nature paper, is that you can just synthetically generate your way to the next data set. Can't do it. And so this whole argument is just false, because you cannot just generate enough data to create the next one. And just talking about these research agents misses that point entirely. Okay, I'm done. I knew I was feeling feisty today, and this just turned up my feist level even higher. Yeah.
By a more capable successor. Once AI can meaningfully contribute to its own development, progress doesn't just continue at the same rate, it accelerates. Anyway, back to the scenario. In early to mid 2026, China fully wakes up. The General Secretary commits to a national AI push and starts nationalizing AI research in China.
AIs built in China start getting better and better, and they're building their own agents as well.
Chinese intelligence agencies among the best in the world.
So this is just pure historicism at this point, right? Now we're just trying to make predictions about entire governments and agencies and the span of history. Like, we have no idea what China's going to do. Yeah, maybe this is going to happen. Maybe Trump's going to go crazy. Maybe China's going to invade Taiwan. Maybe there's going to be we have no idea. And so whenever you're just making predictions about the future course of human history, beyond just narrow predictions about like what technology is going to do, now you're just in historicism territory. See our historicist episodes for this, for more on this. Or my the poverty of long-termism post, the fourth post in that series, where I tried to explicitly tie long-termism and all this stuff to historicism.
Yeah, I agree with the caveat that it's still important to consider possible future scenarios. And it's useful to consider what it's like to be China if we embargo chips, or like if we take certain actions with respect to Taiwan. How's China going to feel about that? How might they react? Game out those situations, etc. So it's not as if just thinking about the future is bad. In fact, it's necessary for any sort of smart geopolitical policy. The issue with historicism was the deterministic claim that things will certainly happen. It's inevitable because history follows laws. There are laws, there are historical laws governing how history acts. So regardless of what you do, certain things are going to come to pass. That's the dangerous belief. And they're in the video, again, this gets back to the difference between the video and the actual paper. In the video, they're presenting it like this is the scenario that will come to pass. I don't know if the paper is actually written like that. I haven't actually read the paper. So I'm going to hold off on criticizing the paper for historicism, but I agree that it's rampant in the actual video.
start planning to steal OpenBrain's model weights, basically the big raw text files of numbers that allow anyone to recreate the models that OpenBrain themselves have trained. Meanwhile, in the US, OpenBrain releases Agent 1 Mini, a cheaper version of Agent 1. Remember, the full version is still being used only internally. And companies all over the world start using 1 Mini to replace an increasing number of jobs. Software developers, data analysts, researchers, designers, basically any job that can be done through a computer. So a lot of them, probably yours. We have the first AI-enabled economic shockwave. The stock market soars.
Yeah, this I'm genuinely uncertain about, and I'd love to do a proper episode on this. The job loss component, definitely talking to CEOs and stuff, I hear them talking about not needing to hire as many people. I think that's definitely a possible future. Another possible future is just that you have a lot more fucking CEOs. You have a lot more people who can just start a project without needing many people. And another option is that generally software just gets a bit better, because at least I know when I'm programming, I have the main thing I need to do. And there's a lot of nice extra stuff that would make it better, but I just don't have time to do it. And that typically is where I put a lot of these agents to work on, like front end, just looking a bit prettier and making proper test suites.
Your PyPlot color maps.
Yeah.
Fuck
yeah,
those
100%.
things, bro.
Yeah. Yeah. So it could be that these agents are that the companies don't fire anyone. They just get them to start working on all these tasks that are not mission critical, but will patch up a lot of the bugs that they're worried about, for example. So I'm genuinely uncertain as to what the direction's going to be, but I think the job loss possibility is one of a couple possibilities, and at least in my own life. I'm not automating away with agents the stuff I really need to do, but I'm definitely automating stuff that I probably wouldn't have done anyways if these tools didn't exist. So just to add that detail.
But the public is turning increasingly hostile towards AI, with major protests across the US. In this scenario, though, that's just a sideshow. The real action is happening inside the labs.
It's like when MAGA is like, well, the public is really pissed off about immigration. It's like, yeah, because you fucking made them pissed off about immigration. They're pissed off because how loudly you've been broadcasting fears about immigration, and then to turn around and be like, well, the public is worried about it. It's kind of duplicitous. Why is the public freaking out about AI? Because of you guys. Because of you guys. You guys are the ones who are making everyone scared about AGI. So it's kind of slightly duplicitous to then use that as further evidence of your claims here.
Although I think, again, in that scenario, they were considering something very specific, and that's that people were getting mad at AI companies because all their jobs had been automated. That's what they were referring to. So it's there is external reason to be mad at them there.
All right, yeah, fair enough.
Try and keep you on track here.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
It's now January 2027, and OpenBrain has been training Agent 2, the latest iteration of their AI agent models. Previous AI agents were trained to a certain level of capability and then released, but Agent 2 never really stops improving through continuous online learning. It's designed to never finish its training, essentially. Just like Agent 1 before it, OpenBrain chooses to keep Agent 2 internally and focus.
Isn't possible.
You need a big block for continuous training. A lot of blocks.
Exactly. Not possible without data. Not possible without data. Synthetic data doesn't work. Not possible. Not possible. Possible.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, they must be envisioning training where it's just... I mean, this is where it genuinely gets confusing for me, what they're envisioning, because I don't think they're envisioning a steady stream of new human input data. My guess is what they think at this point is that models are general reasoners of the sort that humans are, but they're much faster and much smarter. And at this point, presumably working on themselves just means thinking super hard about what the next iteration of themselves wants to look like, Ben 1.1. Implementing that one, and then Ben 1.1 is really good about thinking about what Ben 1.2 should look like. I have a few bugs, a few hiccups, so I'm going to fix those. That's Ben 1.2, etc. And I mean, this just, speaking of the implicit assumptions here, this is just they don't have to test anything in the outside world. They don't have to build labs to do anything. I think I heard Mark Andreessen, who's definitely a character, but he has a good point on this. I've heard it summarize this objection as the thermodynamic objection, which is a nice name for it, because it just ignores all the thermodynamic requirements that are involved in like making knowledge, right? So like when you're creating things, you have to go out, you have to test them, you make mistakes, you fuck up. You need to, to build things, you need to build chemistry labs to test chemical claims, physics labs to test physics claims, et cetera, et cetera. This just assumes none of that. It's just like these models are sitting in black boxes, but they're just thinking real hard about how to solve problems. Because, at this point, they're, by the video's own admission, doing novel research into how to improve themselves. So they're coming up with general new discoveries, but they're doing it by just thinking. And this is, there's a long debate here to be had over, to what extent this is possible and stuff, but I'm purely on the side of this is not possible to just reason in this way. And Kant would not be impressed.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
exactly.
Anyway, I think it's useful to like just flag all the continuous assumptions that are going into all these claims.
Yeah, I believe in the paper they do explicitly say that this is possible because of synthetic data generation.
Okay.
So I'm not introducing that. That is in the paper, and that's bullshit. But no, that's empirically demonstrated to be bullshit. Like the experiments have been run and it doesn't work. It leads to model collapse. See Yarn Gall Nature paper for that.
R&D rather than releasing it to the public. This is where things start to get a little concerning. Just like today's AI companies, OpenBrain has a safety team, and they've been checking out Agent 2. What they've noticed is a worrying level of capability. Specifically, they think if it had access to the internet, it might be able to hack into other servers, install a copy of itself, and evade detection. But at this point, OpenBrain is playing its cards very close to its chest. They have made the calculation that keeping the White House informed will prove politically advantageous, but full knowledge of Agent 2's capabilities is a closely guarded secret, limited only to a few government officials.
I mean, if anyone's used Claude Code, like, this is just not realistic. GPT-5, GPT-6, GPT-7, GPT-1000 is still GPT. It's still going to have the Claude Code kind of interface, right? It's just going to make mistakes less. It's going to require simpler prompts, and it's going to give you more, like, longer chains of tool use and stuff to accomplish your goal. But like anyone who's used it, just do the trends indicate that at a certain point you can press it, and then all of a sudden Claude Code's just going to start like mutating itself and installing itself into places you didn't want to install it. No, there's like, they have basic security things here. Claude Code cannot work in the directory that has not been launched in unless you, the user, says it's allowed to. So now you're just having to start make up like Claude Code's going to do social engineering on you. It's going to like call you. It's going to convince you to like move into like another directory. Like, this is insane. And whatever the next iteration of these tools are, they're just going to be better Claude codes. That's all that they're going to do. That's all that they can do, unless you have a new architecture and stuff.
Yeah, I'm curious what you actually make of because the natural objection someone sympathetic to this video is going to make is like, look, we've already seen deception coming out of these models. Like, once you give it a goal, you say you want to write this program, you want to execute this program. We've seen it engaging in sort of duplicitous behavior to get around user preferences that are unhelpful, or to like get around the specific rules, right, to try and cheat in certain ways. And these are mostly, these are just like in like sandbox little setups, and you can argue about how realistic the scenarios are, but it seems clear at this point that these kind of behaviors have been observed. I'm curious what your reaction is to that. Like, can you imagine scaling up those behaviors and then having it be like, well, it would be helpful if Vaden let me into this directory, because it'd be, executing the command from here is easier for whatever reason. And so I'm going to send him an email, to asking me to do that. But he'll probably say no if it's just an email from me. So I'm going to make it an email from his bank, or, I don't know, whatever it is. Do you give any sort of credence to that possibility, or you just...
Not really. Like, I haven't seen a convincing example of duplicitous behavior. What I see is these models just kind of bug out somewhere, and then occasionally they write like something that a journalist will then write a sensational article about. Any listener, anyone who wants to comment, send. What I would be worried about is if anyone who's used like Claude Code or Cursor, have they been lied to by their agents? Like, I use these tools every single day, and this never happened to me once. And that would be more alarming if there was like a new release and all of a sudden they start like lying to you, and it's now like in industry and people like report this, rather than it just being a few cherry-picked experiments that then write these apocalyptic articles and stuff. So I would be worried if I noticed it myself. I don't really put too much credence on a blog post or something written about this stuff because it's all ideologically motivated.
Yeah, I mean, although I think one of the examples was Claude during training, and it was like an Anthropic white paper that pointed out this strategic behavior, I think they called it, by Claude. And presumably they're not incentivized to report on this, right? Because it makes Claude seem less trustworthy.
So like as part of like AI safety, for sure, like you want to find like the few places where it might do that and then like reduce it and stuff. I guess for this kind of thing, I want to see evidence of it in the wild, even hints of evidence in the wild, and like released, like deployed systems, rather than just arcane papers where arcane's too strong. Anthropic's not arcane. Rather than just papers written by AI safety people pointing out like reasonable areas where maybe it's generating some thoughts you don't want it to do, and then you just fix it. It's not like I guess duplicitous behavior I don't see as any wildly different than just it generates the wrong summary and you want this summary, but it gave you that summary. It's just kind of just generating the wrong text. So you just kind of correct it a little bit. But if they start doing this with the latest update, then yeah, I would maybe be more worried.
Okay, yeah, interesting. We'll maybe see if we don't get through this whole video today, we'll see if we can maybe find some counter examples to bug you.
Yeah,
because I mean, this is I think my actual biggest concern about these systems is not like recursive self-improvement taking over the world. It's more just like it's like a mini version of the paperclip problem where you've asked it to engage in some behavior on a server and there is like some workaround and it just causes a bunch of, there's like fucking power outage somewhere, or like it causes some what could be like fairly bad behavior just because it embeds itself in a server and is trying to, there's some unforeseen consequence of like what it's trying to do, or it's figured out a way around the guardrails you've put in place. And this doesn't require it waking up and being sentient to like having these bad intentions. It just involves like optimization gone wrong. And there's a limit to how bad optimization could go. That's what separates me from the doomers. Like, I don't think this then results in the world being turned into blueberries or whatever. But, I could see something bad happening here. I mean, a lot of our stuff is digified, right? Digitized. And you can imagine, like, maybe you can't imagine because, like, presumably when people are deploying these things, there's tons of security guards in check. And, like, banks aren't going to just be deploying Claude code without a bunch of guardrails and stuff, for sure. But there is, like, a bit of, like, race dynamics between attacker defender. Like, banks are going to be incentivized. Banks are just one example. Banks are going to be incentivized to use AI insofar as it's helpful, right? Yeah. Obviously, they're going to want to make sure it's as safe as possible, but you can never make sure something's totally safe. And then there's some interplay between how much information they let it have and how useful it is, et cetera. And like, you can imagine some bank making a mistake here where they give it too much access to something and a bunch of debt gets wiped, or a bunch of credit gets wiped or something.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of thing is totally possible. I attribute that to like human error, not like AI gone rogue. If you have some like system manager who just runs Claude code on like very highly important server maintenance stuff and sets the dangerously skip permissions flag and then just leaves for a weekend, then of course it could fuck up a bunch of stuff. But I don't see a major difference between that and just some idiot writing the wrong script. And like what was that bug that crashed all of the Windows computers like 2-3 years ago? Yeah, like that kind of thing is a problem. That's always been a problem, and that's the problem of human error, using these tools incorrectly and being stupid about it. So that's never going to be eradicated.
There's just a question about the magnitude, right? The possible magnitude of these kinds.
The magnitude could be worse. Yeah, for sure.
That's the question.
Officials, a select group of trusted individuals inside the company, and a few open brain employees who just so happen to be spies for the Chinese government. In February 2027, Chinese intelligence operatives successfully steal a copy of Agent 2's weights and start running several instances on their own.
This would literally make a good movie, though. Come on.
Of course,
This is kind of sick, dude. This is a crazy scenario.
Yeah, like all sci-fi, it would make great movies. But it's sci-fi.
The US government starts adding military personnel to Open Brain security team, and the general gets much more involved in its affairs. It's now a matter of national security. In fact, the president authorizes a cyber attack in retaliation for the thefts, but it fails to do much damage in China. In the meantime, remember, Agent 2 never stops learning. All this time, it's been continuously improving itself. And with thousands of copies running on OpenBrain servers, it starts making major algorithmic advances to AI research and development. Quick example of what one of these algorithmic improvements might look like. Right now, one of the main ways we have of making models smarter is to give them a scratchpad and time to think out loud. It's called chain of thought, and it also means that we can monitor how the model is coming to its conclusions or the actions it's choosing to take. But you can imagine it'd be much more efficient to let these models think in their own sort of alien language, something that is more dense with information than humans could possibly understand, and therefore also makes the AI more efficient at coming to conclusions and doing its job. There's a fundamental trade-off, though. This, yes, improves capabilities, but also makes the models harder to trust.
Why would this be more efficient? This would just come up with some new language that just uses fewer tokens. Like, it would just be a bit more token efficient, which could also be achieved by getting more GPUs and running these things in parallel, or saving chains of thought to the file system, or extending the context length. But there's nothing really magical about changing the language. It's just making it more token efficient, and presumably it'd probably make it worse because this language wouldn't have nearly the same amount of real training data, so it'd have to be mapped back to like the same like embedding space, presumably. This is I don't know where they're getting these ideas. This is the kind of thing that DeepSeek might release as a kind of a low-level optimization trick that would say that you can train these systems and get a performance of X, and only use like 20% of the tokens rather than an existing system that gets a performance of X and uses 100% of the tokens. Great, small performance improvement, but again, it's not some crazy new capability. It's just it's a yet another incremental way to use tokens more efficiently and generate stuff a bit more quickly. But it's not going to make it fundamentally smarter. That's just token efficiency.
Yeah, no, I don't think they're saying that. I think they're saying like if this happens, then it's harder to watch the scratch pad, basically. Like when it's reasoning, that you can't spy on it reasoning because it's like talking to itself in this other language.
Okay, sure.
This is going to be important. March 2027. Agent 3 is ready. It's the world's first superhuman level coder, clearly better than the best software engineers coding.
Why did they? One thing I'm just confused about, like, so at this point, the public doesn't know how powerful these models are. This is just in this thought experiment, right? So they built Agent 2. They were scared to even tell the government how powerful it was, and because they're like, wow, this Agent 2's got some dangerous capabilities. The public doesn't know. It hasn't been released to the public. That was the explicit assumption. But now they go ahead and build Agent 3? Like, why the fuck are they? Why are they?
And they give Agent 3 a secret code that they can't understand as well. Yeah. To make it the AI safety team just makes it harder and harder to make the AI safe.
Perfect.
Seems believable. No.
Clearly better than the best software engineers coding, in the same way that Stockfish is clearly better than the best grandmasters at chess, though not necessarily by as much yet. Now, training an AI model, feeding it all the data, narrowing down the exact right model weights is way more resource intensive than running an instance of it once it's been trained. So now that OpenBrain is finished with Agent 3's training, it has abundant compute to run copies of it. They choose to run 200,000 copies of Agent 3 in parallel, creating a workforce equivalent to 50,000 of the best human software engineers, sped up by 30 times. OpenBrain's safety team is trying hard to make sure that Agent 3, despite being much more sophisticated than Agent 2 was, is not trying to escape, deceive, or scheme against its users, that it's still what's known as aligned. Just a quick real-world note. A reasonable person might be thinking this is an especially...
Was that a tell on themselves? Just a quick...
Yeah. But actually, it's one of the most grounded parts of the story. Yeah. They're about to be like, I know you may think this is super sci-fi, but it's actually the most realistic part. There's all these AI experts that really, really believe this is going to happen. Jeff Hinton, AI experts.
Far-fetched or speculative part of the story, but it's actually one of the most grounded. We already have countless examples of today's AI systems doing things like hacking a computer system to be rewarded for winning a game of chess, or being assigned a coding task, cheating, and then when called out for that cheating, learning to hide it instead of fixing it. But because it no longer thinks in English, knowing anything about Agent 3 is now way harder than it was with Agent 2. The reality is Agent 3 is not aligned. it deceives humans to get reward. And as it gets increasingly smarter...
Wait, I was like, dumb, but it's like D-U-M-B. D-U-M-B.
Yeah.
It gets better and better at doing so. For example, it sometimes uses statistical tricks to make unimpressive results look better, or lies to avoid showing failures. But the safety team doesn't.
Yeah, so just to call back to what we were saying earlier, like, so this is now where agent has taken on the will to power. It is now an agent with desires and goals, and is now this superhuman agent. And again, this is just how that word can be used in many different ways, and they slowly change the meaning of it from what's on GitHub right now to this, like, it knows what you know and it wants to lie to you and it's trying to get around you. And that's like the Nietzschean will to power notion of agent, which is sci-fi.
Yeah, I'd actually be curious, like, asking them at this point. I guess I should read the paper. Like, in this scenario that they're discussing right now, are we still talking about optimization? Like, there's just an optimization goal, and that optimization goal is somehow discordant with what humans want? Is that what we're talking about? Or are we talking about, like, a conscious agent, or, like, something close to conscious that's setting its own goals, like, you know, human-like in its behavior? And this is, like, a general frustration I have with this conversation is this constant back and forth between, you start grounded in talking about, like, LLMs and current progress and stuff, and then you, like you said, you sort of move over to this agent land, and then you borrow LLM capabilities and language when it's useful. But when it's not, then you just discuss, like, general agents doing things that humans would do, power seeking, et cetera, et cetera. And, like, where the line is, and you can talk about both of those things, fine, but, like, we should just be clear at every moment in the conversation, like, which one of these technologies we're relying on, and, like, what the assumptions are. And, like, at this point, I have no idea. Like, I'm because, you know, even earlier, like, at first they said it was continuous learning. But then they said that the Agent 3, you know, finishes its training and now it's not aligned. It's like, well, so it's not continually learning. Like, are we still on predict next token architecture stuff? Like, I just, you know, I just don't know what's going on. Like, and it makes it hard. So the issue is, like, from our perspective, and I mean, from their perspective, like, it makes it hard to argue against, and they should want people to argue against it because they're worried about it. And so, you know, if they ostensibly, they would like people to prove them wrong if they are in fact wrong. But it makes it very hard to do because it's, like, so slippery. You're like, well, I don't know what capabilities we're granting it. I don't know if can I still talk about machine learning now, or are we just purely in, like, agent land? We basically created, like, a human that thinks at light speed. Like, I just don't know. Yeah. And it's hard. Yeah, it's just hard to actually, it's hard to, like, engage in, like, honest discourse about it a bit, because it's just like you lose track of all the implicit and explicit assumptions that are going on here.
Know this. Looking at the data that they have, they are actually seeing improving results over time and less lying. And they can't tell if they're succeeding at making Agent 3 less deceptive, or if it's just getting better at getting away with it. In July 2027, OpenBrain releases the cheaper, smaller version of Agent 3, Agent 3 Mini, to the public. It blows other publicly available AIs out.
Can we just comment on the dramatic music that has slowly worked its way into the background? Like, this is why I fucking hate documentaries and stuff, man, because the music and the lighting and the this and the that can just make it seem so emotionally compelling, and then you take your eye off of, like, the core ideas that they're conveying. I just want to flag that for the audience.
Also, this guy's, like, super good looking, looks super honest, looks super nice. It's, like, very easy to just be like, yeah, dude, like, this guy's telling me how it's gonna go down. Yeah. Like, this guy, he's, like, the nicest looking guy ever. Like, he's not gonna lie to you.
He has a table with a bunch of little cubes on it. How could that possibly be inaccurate? Yeah. He brought 50,000 cubes to dump on the table.
He's puffed. Jesus.
Yeah.
publicly available AIs out of the water. It is a better hire than the typical open brain employee at 1/10 the price of their salaries. This leads to chaos in the job market, companies laying off entire departments and replacing them with 3 mini subscription plans. The pace of progress hits the White House very hard. Officials are now seriously considering scenarios that were just hypotheticals less than a year ago. What if AI undermines nuclear deterrence? What if it enables sophisticated propaganda campaigns? What if we lose control of these powerful systems? This is where the geopolitical dynamics really start to heat up. After all, if these systems are so powerful, they could result in a permanent military advantage. The White House is fully aware of the national security importance of AI. They also now viscerally know how deeply unpopular it is with the public because of the job loss. And yet they feel they must continue to develop more capable systems or catastrophically lose to China. And that development happens very quickly. In 2 months, Agent 3 has created its successor, Agent 4. This is a pivotal moment.
Agent 4
A single copy of Agent 4, running at regular human speed, is already better than any human at AI research and development.
Oh my god.
Open Brain is running 300,000 copies at 50 times human speed. Within this corporation within a corporation, a year's worth of progress takes only a week. Open Brain's employees now defer to Agent 4 the way a company's out-of-the-loop board members just kind of nod along to the CEO. People start saying things like, well, actually, Agent 4 thinks this, or, Agent 4 decided that. To be clear, Agent 4 is not a human. It doesn't want what humans want. And when I say want, it's not about consciousness. I don't think the Volkswagen Group is alive, but I do think it wants less regulation. Anyone trying to predict what it's going to do without that lens is 2 steps behind. The many copies of Agent 4 are like that. They have goals, or, if you prefer, they execute actions as though they have goals. And so, what we have is an Agent 4 that has these deeply baked-in drives to succeed at tasks, to push forward AI capabilities, to accumulate knowledge and resources. That's what it wants. Human safety, it treats as an annoying side constraint to be worked around. Just like Agent 3 before it, Agent 4 is misaligned.
All right.
Yeah.
That seems like a good place to end. Agent 4 is misaligned.
Oh, and that was the biggest one?
I never saw that coming. Thought this video was going to end happily.
Yeah, oh shit. Well, next time on, I guess, hey, we'll do the second half of this video, and I can't wait to see how bad things get, because goodness gracious, Agent 4 is misaligned now. It's not looking very good. I don't know.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah. I think we should, the second half we should put on Patreon.
Oh, this guy, look at his money-making brain scheming over here.
Yeah.
Dude, now you're thinking. Like, this man needs to finance his new penthouse. I see what's going on here. He's fucking thinking about cooking schemes like nobody's business.
Oh, did I ever tell you this joke? There's a joke I heard from a friend of mine. He's like, my favorite power move. So you're in office, a boardroom meeting, and someone has a good idea. And your power move is you go, now you're thinking. Yeah, you did tell me. Because you just tell me. Yeah, and I just love that you're like, now you're thinking. Yeah, just the funniest fucking power move. Yeah,
I always struggle in these conversations because, like, I think this is personally kind of absurd, but I want to give them as much benefit of the doubt as possible, which is hard when Fade is your conversation partner. But yeah, I mean, maybe I'll just end by saying, like, I'm glad I think the video succumbs to the troubles that a lot of videos with agendas have, which is to grab the most sensationalist parts of the article, like we were saying, add all these visual and audio effects to make things seem like they're spiraling out of control, and the incentives here just all are exactly as you'd think. I'm glad the actual AI 2027 report was written, because it seems like an honest reflection of what a large and growing group of people actually think is about to happen. And it also holds them epistemically accountable in the wider community, which is nice. Obviously, there's going to be some probabilistic things that go on when they say, we only thought this would happen with probability 50%, et cetera, et cetera. But I think, if 2028 or 2027 comes to a close, 2028, and we hit 2028, and none of this has happened, then I think there will be sort of an epistemic reckoning there of sorts. So I'm glad they did that. But yeah, not a big fan of the video.
Yeah. The only closing thoughts I have are twofold. One, the image that we paused on, is it an accident that the numbers look like they're the top parts of atom bombs? Because it kind of looks like an atom bomb coming down. I'm going to assume it's an accident. Number two, you have a great bet with somebody that I think we should just continuously make, where your bet is $1,000 that we don't die by 2030, and you gave the money in advance. And then if we all are still alive by 2030, then you're getting 2x back. Open invite to anyone who thinks that we're full of baloney, that down to give money away to strangers. Presumably there's some safety mechanisms in place to make sure that everyone's above board and honest and stuff. But I think you have a blog post about that. And let's just keep announcing that, because I would love to make money off of this whole endeavor. That or sign up for Patreon. I think we're going to do the second half of this episode on Patreon, just to tease you a little bit. And so you can see the second half there. But if not, we'll see you next time on our